What's up, guys? Well, over the past couple of weeks, I have had straight up Resident Evil fever. We got the release of Resident Evil 8 Village. I've been playing through some of the older games, trying to get trophies that I haven't gotten yet. I am an absolute addict of this franchise, and it just continuously sucks me back in. And it got me thinking, Resident Evil 8's done now. It sucks that it's done already, but it's done. So what do we need to look forward to in the future? What do we want in Resident Evil 9? They've already said that this is going to be a trilogy, so we are going to get a third and final chapter in the Winters saga. There's also been some rumblings that this is possibly the final main numbered game, which I don't believe for a second, but nonetheless, let's operate under the assumption that this is the final mainline storyline game in the Resident Evil franchise. There's a lot of promises in those two statements. Also, guys, before I get started, if you are a Resident Evil fan, I have dropped a lot of Resident Evil content over the past couple of weeks. Of course, I reviewed Village. I've done 3 rankings in collaboration with Rudy's Movie Reviews, talking about our favorite characters, bosses, and ranking all of the Resident Evil mainline games. So if you're a fan of this franchise, I'll put a card up here. Check out that playlist and see what else on this channel has for you Resident Evil fanatics. So what are 10 things that I want in Resident Evil 9? Starting right off with number 10, I want this to remain in the first-person shooter perspective. I know some people are very harsh critics of this change of pace that we've gotten since Resident Evil 7, but I think if you're going to culminate this trilogy, it would make absolutely zero sense to change it back to over-the-shoulder or to change it back to, God forbid, the fixed camera tank controls or something like that. I think that you would have to finish this off with first-person perspective. And I'm somebody that I genuinely enjoy it. I don't necessarily want every Resident Evil game to be that from now on, but if we are going to culminate this trilogy, if we are going to wrap up the Winters saga, you might as well finish things how they started with that first-person perspective. Number 9, I'm going to go off the assumption that we are going to be playing as Rose Winters. They gave a pretty big hint of that at the end of Resident Evil Village with the time jump and with showcasing that she's somehow working with Chris, working with the government or the BSAA. It's a little bit up in the air, but she is definitely in this fight, and she has some form of powers. So number 9 for me is that I do want her to have some powers if we are playing with her. I think that would be a nice way to kind of change up the gameplay a little bit, but I want it to remain modest. You know, Resident Evil 6, when you had Jake, I believe his name was, he had some bioweapon powers kind of going through his gameplay, and some would say that they go a little bit too far. And Resident Evil is one of those franchises that sometimes doesn't quite know when they're going too far. They do have a hard time towing that line of giving us just enough and not going so far into the stupid. Now, you go big and over the top, yeah, sometimes it can make for some awesome games, sometimes it just makes for some stupid shit. So I do want Rose to have powers, but I want them to keep it close to the chest. You know, give us a couple of powers. Maybe throughout the gameplay we have to recharge her powers, or maybe she can only use it once in a while, like a big attack if you're really in trouble, and maybe it takes away some of her health. I really don't know, but make it a part of the gameplay strategy. Don't just make us invincible where we're going through and we're just fucking Neoing everybody. Number 8, stranger. I want the merchant to come back. I think that that was one of the best decisions that they made with Resident Evil Village, was bringing back the merchant concept of Resident Evil 4, where you have this guy that randomly shows up in places that there's absolutely no worldly explanation for him to be there, but he shows up and you can sell things, you can give him treasures, now you can give him cooking ingredients, and you can buy upgrades and buy new weapons and buy consumables. I think that that really, really helps the gameplay, and I think that it just adds another level of strategy in there with how you're spending your money, how you're spending your upgrades, and I just thought it was one of the best best additions back to the Resident Evil franchise in Resident Evil Village. So absolutely keep that guy around. Maybe give us a new one, or expand the story of who the hell that dude was in Resident Evil Village, because there's a lot of interesting theories that he might not quite be who he says he is. Number 7, this one kind of should go without saying in a Resident Evil game, but unfortunately, sometimes it has to be said. I want massive, memorable, epic boss battles in this game. I'm sure they're going to take the same template of having numerous little sub-bosses eventually leading up to a main boss. That's kind of classic Resident Evil. That's certainly the template that we've had so far in this trilogy. And if they want to carry through with that, absolutely. But I want these boss battles to be so fucking awesome that they all go out on a bang. I want to get to the end of Resident Evil 9 and immediately have to go back and revise my favorite Resident Evil bosses list and include at least 2 or 3 from the new game. I think that it's easy to do as long as they focus on making each individual fight something unique, something different gameplay-wise and strategy-wise of the other ones, make them awesome, make them scary, make them engaging. I mean, it's asking a lot, but they've done it before in the past. So if anything needs to get their focus to just make this one of the best Resident Evil games, that is certainly something that should be on their list. Number 6, I want a mix of tones of Resident Evil Biohazard and Resident Evil Village. I want it to be scary and psychological on the level that Resident Evil 7 was, but I also want to keep some of that gothic aesthetic, that atmosphere that Resident Evil Village had, and some of that faster pace, some of that more action-centric. I know some people really just want it to be straightforward horror. They don't really care for a lot of action in the Resident Evil games. I think that's pretty much impossible to ask at this point, so I think that it's reasonable to want a mix of both. I like the direction, I like the tonal shift in Resident Evil Village, something a little bit more faster paced, a little bit more dynamic, but I did miss that psychological horror of 7. Don't be pandering to those pussies that can't take these Resident Evil games, that can't take survival horror games. That is not your audience, Capcom. We want it to be scary. We want it to be crazy. We want it to be so fucking intense that we have to take breaks from the game. So give us a happy medium between those two, please. Number 5, I want this trilogy to culminate in a way to where the Ethan Winters character and the Ethan Winters legacy feels genuinely significant, because as much as they tried to kind of make him more of a likable character, to make him more of a character itself in Resident Evil Village, I still think by the end of that game he does feel like a footnote in the Resident Evil franchise. You know, you're not going to see too many people, aside from my buddy Rudy, that is going to put him in a list of their favorite characters. You're not going to see them stacked up against characters like Chris Redfield or Leon Kennedy or Claire or Jill, who have had all these adventures that have so much significance to the lore and the franchise, but you're going to have Ethan Winters that's just this major character in 2 games, possibly 3 if he comes back, and we still don't really feel like we get to know the guy very much. We still don't really feel like he is as significant a piece of this story. It really just feels like he's this unlucky pawn in all of this. And if they don't bring him back, he's essentially just there to give us Rose for the last game, which makes him feel even less significant. So I want them to find some reasonable story way to bring his character full circle by the 3rd game and make it feel like his legacy in this franchise is genuine, that it is significant, that it's something that is no longer a footnote, it's actually a chapter of the Resident Evil franchise. Number 4, bring back the VR, bitch! What the hell was that? Resident Evil 7 Biohazard gave us VR. I've said numerous times that is the scariest, most awesome survival horror experience that I've ever had in my life because of that VR. I mean, it's a fantastic game all on its own, and I'm sure I would have loved the hell out of it if they never had VR support in the first place, but going through that story and experiencing the atmosphere of that game and the psychological horror in VR just brings it to a new level. Oh, fuck. Fuck me! Oh, shit! Oh, shit! Oh, hell. Oh, shit. Oh, fuck. And I was gutted to find out, literally one day before I got the game, that Resident Evil Village was not going to have this support. I was actually scrambling, trying to find that little connection cable that you have to convert your PS4 camera into your PS5, because I didn't even know you needed that shit. I was just like, oh, I got the stuff, I don't need to do anything. Then I find out a couple of days before the game comes out that you have to have this cord, and I'm online like offering to pay people $100 for it. Swear to God, I was that scrambled to try to find a way to play VR because that was so important to me to be able to experience Village in that way. Luckily, before I paid somebody $100, I found out that they're not even gonna have VR support in it at all. We'll see if they have it. Maybe they'll add it later on. I'm sure that they would even be able to sell it as a separate release, and stupid asses like me would go out and buy it. But Resident Evil 9, you better have VR support from launch. PS5 is going to have its own VR headset here soon. It's definitely going to be out before Resident Evil 9 hits the shelves, so there's no excuse whatsoever, aside from just being a bunch of chumps, to not have VR support. bring it back. Number 3, I want classic Resident Evil full exploration, backtracking, puzzle solving, key mechanics. I want all of that classic survival horror aesthetics brought back to this game. Resident Evil Village kind of had the mirage of that. In fact, when you watch my review of the game, you see that's one of the things that I praise in it, that we get to explore again, that we get to go back and forth, and there is some backtracking back to it. And the more that I played the game, the more that I realized that it is a very linear game that they kind of mask with some exploration. I still enjoy that. I still very much think that it's a nice compromise there, but I want full exploration back. I imagine a version of Village where you walk in and you can attack these 4 lords in whatever order you want. You can go and get items in whatever order you want, and it changes up the strategy, it changes up your playtime, and a lot of hardcore Resident Evil fans like me will go and try to find the best, the easiest way to try to take out all these people. And it almost brings like an old school Mega Man mechanic back to it, to where you have to kill one boss to get something that might make another boss extremely easier. Or if you just fuck up and go to that boss first, and you're just in for a hell of a fight when you could have went to him. I see something cool with that they could play with, that I don't think they would have to really change the code of their game very much. I think that it would actually be really easy for them to implement. So I want that full exploration back. I want that feeling of being back in that Resident Evil Raccoon City Police Department where I have to go upstairs and in the basement and try to find certain things and go in a certain order. I want that brought to Resident Evil 9. Number 2, I want the story in some way, shape, or form to focus on Umbrella's resurgence. We haven't heard a whole lot from Umbrella since what, Resident Evil 3? Back when they nuked Raccoon City? I could be wrong with that. There's some side chapters I have not played, but for the most part, we've moved on since then. We had the Las Plagas in 4, we had the Ouroboros in 5, we had whatever the fuck 6 was, and 7's been focusing on the mold, 8 was just like a expansion on the mold. We got hints of the origins of Umbrella and some hidden origins, some hidden secrets that we had not found out before in Resident Evil Village. And they, at the end of the game, they basically give us teases that Chris is going to be going against the BSAA. This is a organization that he has been in, that he has been leading against bioweapons, and he finds out at the end of Village that they're using bioweapons, that they're actually dropping bioweapons into the village at the end, trying to take out all the other bioweapons, and he is not okay with that. So I want some form of storyline in the form of Chris taking on the BSAA, to where maybe it's like a Shield Hydra thing, that kind of Trojan horse, to where Umbrella is back and they've been funding the BSAA, and all the while you thought you were doing something good, and haha, bitch, we're coming back. I want something like that. If they're realistically going to be closing out the Resident Evil storyline with this game, and not just the Ethan Winters storyline, if this is in fact the final Resident Evil main numbered game, you gotta bring it full circle with Umbrella. I just think that would be a badass way to bring in fans of the old and fans of the new and give us this epic conclusion. But the number one thing that I want in Resident Evil 9 is that I want most, if not all, of the classic characters to be involved in the storyline. We've gotten Chris for the past 2 games. I mean, a nugget of him in 7 and a pretty significant piece in 8. I don't think that it's going to be that difficult at all to write a story to where Claire has to come back, to where Leon has to come back, to where Jill is back. Haven't heard from her since Resident Evil 5. If we're going to have this big, epic showdown with the BSAA or Umbrella, if this is going to be this final culmination game, you've got to bring those characters back. You've got to have something that Resident Evil 6 tried to do, to where you bring all of them together for this epic fight across the globe, and bring them into this scenario where you're playing as Rose, you're the prospective character, and you get to meet and interact with all these characters that have been in this fight for decades. I think that there is no better and no easier way to make this game a complete epic conclusion, to make this thing one of the greatest Resident Evil games. You could take everything, again, not to shit on 6, but I'm shitting on 6, everything that Resident Evil 6 wanted to do, that they were setting out to do, and do it right. Do it the good way. Do it in a way that makes sense, that doesn't feel forced, it doesn't drag it to 4 fucking campaigns. Give us this badass, packed out storyline that brings all these different storylines that we've been following since the 90s full circle. Well, that's it, guys. That is my 10 things that I want in Resident Evil 9. What are 10 things that you want in Resident Evil 9? Let me know down below. Do you think this is going to be the final game, actually, or do you think that's absolute bullshit? Money talks, baby. If this thing sells a shitload of money, they're not just going to say, okay, moving on to something else. It's not beyond the realm of possibility, but I think Capcom's a little bit smarter than that. So let me know your thoughts down below. What do you like about the Resident Evil franchise right now, and what do you want in the future? Please like and share this video. Hit that subscribe button so that you can check out all of my future content. I've done quite a bit on Resident Evil here. We're gonna have Ratchet and Clank coming out soon. Of course, if you like movies, I've got a ton of content on that. So please hit the subscribe button to not miss anything. Thank you guys for watching as always, and remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean you have to be.